Why did the USSR turn over West Berlin? Early on in 1945, the Soviet Union in the East, together with the Allies led by the United States in the West, were competing to take control of Berlin. The Soviet Union was the first to arrive and seize control of the city in April of that year, as you are aware. In spite of this, Berlin did not only continue to be a part of the occupation zone of the Soviet Union or even East Germany after the war was over. Rather, it was also divided between the two competing countries that emerged triumphant. In light of this, the question arises, why? Considering that the Soviet Union had already taken control of West Berlin, why did it choose to hand it over to the Allies? As a result, the fact that Berlin was the capital of Germany meant that it held a symbolic importance in relation to the powers that emerged triumphant should not come as a surprise to you. It was for this reason that when both sides were negotiating the manner in which Germany would be divided, it was decided that Berlin would also be divided. This was something that everyone had agreed to because nobody knew who would arrive in Berlin first, and it seemed like the most equitable thing to do to make sure that everyone received a piece of it. However, Stalin was not exactly known for being a man of his word, despite his reputation. Because of this, when Soviet troops took control of the city, he was forced to make the decision to hand over the majority of it to the Western Allies. The reasons he gave for doing so were, in all honesty, very straightforward. First and foremost, there was still a battle that was taking place. Because Japan was still engaged in a war in the East, it was necessary for the Western Allies and the Soviet Union to get along with one another. A great opportunity presented itself to the Soviet Union when it came to the control of large swaths of territory in China, Korea, and possibly even Japan. Furthermore, the fact that Washington, London, and Paris were alienated was not going to make it any simpler to acknowledge whatever changes that occurred after the war. As a result, Stalin honored his earlier promises because it appeared to be a decent transaction to hand over a portion of a city in exchange for a portion of a continent. The second point is that Stalin was of the opinion that the partition of Berlin was merely a stopgap expedient. The Allies were merely acting in this manner to demonstrate their solidarity, and it was an inevitability that more rational thought would triumph, resulting in Berlin being reunited. The objective was never to permanently separate Germany, and Stalin had believed that a reunited Germany would soon become communist and thus under his authority. It was therefore not considered a concession to hand up West Berlin. Rather, it was perceived as a show of goodwill toward the partners of the Soviet government. As soon as it became apparent that Germany's separation was going to be permanent and that the West was going to merge their Germany into an anti-Soviet alliance, he locked off the western part of the city. He had forgotten that there was a sky. As a consequence of the blockade, the United States and the Royal Air Force of the United Kingdom airdropped food and supplies into Berlin for a period of almost 1 year until Stalin finally gave in. It was at this point that Stalin came to the realization that he had made a mistake. In addition to being a sign of Germany's defeat, the seizure of Berlin by Western forces was also a demonstration of their will to fight against the Soviet Union. And because there was no way to remove the West without resorting to full-scale war, the aim was to make it as difficult as possible for people to retain their presence there. This was accomplished by causing shipments to be delayed, and by making the bureaucratic process extremely difficult to manage. In the end, this strategy was unsuccessful, which is why Nikita Khrushchev, Stalin's successor, issued an ultimatum in 1958, stating that Berlin must be evacuated or else we will take action. Having said that, the Ally declined, and when the deadline came and went without a hitch, well, that was the end of it. Furthermore, in the end, the Soviet Union was forced to acknowledge that it had made a mistake when it handed over 50% of Berlin, mainly due to the fact that the Western powers were not going anywhere. Thank you for following this video. I invite you to subscribe to this channel to keep up to date with the next super interesting videos that will be released. Leave a like and a comment below, also with requests on what topics you would like me to talk about. See you in the next video.